seats. Charlie Dean was a good friend of mine. He was more than that. He was actually like a big brother to me. And when I was growing up, this was in high school. He was several years older than me. He was just the coolest guy that I knew. And he was an artist. He was an athlete, and taught me his philosophies on love and life, and introduced me to music and all kinds of stuff. So through the years, we kind of lost contact. He moved to North Alabama, got married, had kids, and I moved to South Florida, got married. And years later, he called me. It was kind of a random call, and didn't expect it. I heard in his voice that something wasn't right. So I asked, what's going on? And he said, I've been struggling with depression for the past couple of years, and it seems to be getting worse. I was early in my graduate studies, and I didn't know much about depression and all the risks that came along with that. But I did know to end the conversation by just letting him know how concerned that I was for him, and letting him know, the big question: are you thinking of hurting yourself? And he said no. We just kind of brushed it off. No, I'm okay. I'm not going to do anything like that. And I didn't know any better, but just to leave it at that. And sure enough, a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call. Charlie had shot himself. And fast forward a number of years. Well, now let's go to the funeral first. And so back at the funeral, this is where things got interesting, because I didn't know why someone would choose to kill themselves. I'm sure you've all kind of thought about that question as well. Like, why would somebody do something like that? And a lot of theories that I heard were interesting from the adults around me. I thought he was strong-minded. I didn't realize he was weak-minded. Another one was he must have been on drugs. And another one was this is the favorite one. What a selfish act. And one thing that we learn in social psychology is the fundamental attribution error. So the fundamental attribution error is it's applying judgment to a person's character rather than accurately applying judgment to the situation that caused the behavior. So fast forward a number of years, and master's degree, PhD in psychotherapy, and in my clinical practice, I had Henry show up. Henry had been suffering from major depressive disorder for a number of years, had a history of suicide attempts. And so he came in for help, but this particular day, he was right in the midst of another episode of depression where he was having thoughts of killing himself. And something struck me about Henry, something very profound that made me throw aside the whole protocol that we're supposed to go through of doing a risk assessment, and if they're going to harm themselves, then we've got to do an involuntary admission to a psychiatric facility, and sometimes if nobody can take them, we have to call the police, they handcuff them, throw them in the back of the car, and that whole thing. I didn't have a thought about any of that, because what I saw in him was such sincerity, such authenticity, such transparency that he was sharing with me of the depth of the emotion, of the experience, of the pain that he was in. And so I spent the hour just sitting with him and connecting with that and trying to understand that and wanting to know more. And as a side effect, hopefully having him feel like he's heard and understood. So understanding that opened up inside of me this sense of great compassion that I've never felt for a client to that point. And I felt a lot of compassion through the years for clients, but really to that depth, it was a rare thing. And so I did end the session and had to, of course, Baker acting is what we call it, involuntarily admit him to a psychiatric facility, which is just the worst case scenario, because people often go in such a vulnerable state and they're so traumatized by that experience because it's so horrible in such a dysfunctional organization and putting people in. Anyway, it's a whole thing. And so it's the last thing that we want to do. But so that was Henry. Fast forward to 2024, last year, me. So I've been struggling with health issues the past couple of years, and doctors put me on a lot of stuff for a lot of symptoms, and one of my symptoms was chronic fatigue. And the urologist said, hey, we got these testosterone injections, and I knew lots of guys that were on them. He's like, everybody's on them, people get helped by that, and it's great stuff, and it'd probably really help you with your chronic fatigue, even though I wasn't low on the testosterone scale. And I said, anything that'll help, yeah. So I walked out. Before I walked out, I said, are there any side effects I need to be aware of? He said, no, there's minimum at best, and people rarely complain of them. About 2 months later, I started experiencing 1, 2, 3 days every 6 weeks or so of severe bouts of depression. And guess what that came with? Thoughts of killing myself. So laying on my back deck one evening, after curling up in a fetal position, sobbing for about an hour, for absolutely no reason, I had this realization that I never felt more connected, and this is the theme tonight, of course, I've never felt more connected to the stories of Charlie and Henry than I did at that moment, because I completely got and understood what they were going through, the depth of pain, and how killing themselves made sense. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but it made sense to me. And so, spoiler alert here, I did not kill myself. So just, don't worry about that. I'm here. But that's all goes to the compassion and the love and support that I was met with every episode I went through from my wife, Elizabeth, and I always tell her not to cry whenever she talks. She cries a lot. So anyway, what I walk away from this with is what the fundamental attribution error. We first have to seek to understand someone's situation. Then that opens the door for compassion to enter. And then when compassion enters, we can enter into the world of love. So, thank you.
Thank you all for being here. We know that the Equity Project Alliance is about more than sharing stories. Though sharing stories is incredibly important. And I think Sean said it well when he says, if you don't open the book, in other words, if you don't get to know the person, how do you know who they be? And as we think about this African word that we've used a lot in industry, and now have been talking about that in a listening circle that we're in. There's a group of us who are reading a book called The Crucible of Racism, and we've been having some very deep conversations. One of the things we talked about was Ubuntu, and that is the idea that I see you. And I think too many times that we walk around and we're really not seen. And in fact, often we are dismissed, seen as unimportant, as if you really don't matter. Well, I want you to know with the EPA, you matter. The goal of the Equity Project Alliance is to ally ourselves with like-minded folks and some non-like-minded folks, because we believe in the power of change. We believe that when we come together and get to know each other, magic can happen.